Okay, right, 12:02. Let's begin, shall we? So, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Mark Willis. I work in the strategy team at Bromford Flagship, and this is quite a long series now of webinars that we've put together to kind of talk publicly about our move as an organisation to a place-based way of working. Um, and I'm joined today by a fantastic panel. We're going to have a bit of a chat. We've got the three place leads from the three pilots that we've got up and running already, and also another member of the strategy team, and I'll let themselves introduce themselves in just a second. But just to set the scene for today's webinar, we've looked previously at kind of the principles of place-based working. We've looked at planning the pilots. We've looked at the pilots and the performance and different metrics that we've looked at to try and track success as well. But today we want to kind of take a little bit of a step back and just have a bit of a review. That's what we called it, kind of a year in review. So without further ado, we're going to hear from our place leads. But first, should we start with you, Emily? Do you want to introduce yourself, kind of your role, and a little bit about the place?
Hi, my name's Emily. I'm the place lead for Staple Hill in Bristol, one of the pilots. I've only been in role for 3 weeks, so I'm very new to the place, but I've been at Bromford for just coming up to 7 years now. So really know the area and really know the challenges, but also the wins that we get within our place. We've got lots of flats, lots of blocks of flats, lots of schemes. So lots of different types of homes that we're sort of maintaining and keeping for our customers, as well as a really diverse community within that place.
Thanks, Emily. Yeah, paradoxically, Staple Hill is actually kind of the longest running pilot, despite you only having been in for 3 weeks. So it's been an interesting challenge, hasn't it? Kind of that handover in general. Perhaps if I come to you next, Helen, to introduce yourself and a little bit about Lichfield.
Hi, yes, I'm Helen Minchin. I've worked at Bromford for quite a long time, actually. Been part of South Lichfield Place just over a year now. So we started November last year. South Lichfield is a real mix of homes as well. So we've got quite a lot of new build in South Lichfield. So lots of homes that are under 20 years old. We've got a small amount of villages just attached to South Lichfield as well, which have got some older stock. Lots of different kinds of homes, bungalows, flats, but lots of 1, 2, 3 bed homes as well, houses. So generally, the homes that we've got in South Lichfield are newer, in good order. Customers generally really like living there.
Brilliant, thanks, Helen. And Rachel.
Hi everybody, I'm Rachel. I'm the place team lead covering the pilot for the North Cotswolds. This pilot area is quite different again. It's all rural communities, so it's made up of 13 different villages that span across a large area of the North Cotswolds. Like the others, different makeup of homes, but quite a lot is older stock. We have got some new homes as well, but we do have a large proportion of homes that have been built over many decades.
Brilliant, thanks, Rachel. And last but not least, Paul, do you want to introduce yourself, your kind of relationship to the pilots, and perhaps talk a little bit about exactly as Rachel kind of alluded to there, that all of these pilots are very different, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll probably come out in this chat. So I'm Paul. I'm an innovation coach within the strategy team alongside Mark. My role has been help with other colleagues setting up the pilots, right from the original one in Staple Hill with Angela, who I see us on the call. Welcome, Angela. And then making sure that we get the learning from each one and we connect it, because what's really important, as you said, Mark, is of the places we've set up so far and we will continue to set up into next year, they're all very, very different, and that'll probably come out during some of this call. So what's really important as you move to a place-based working model is you don't just see these things as places in isolation, because although they're very different, you connect what works, you see what works in different places, and we'll probably talk about that during the day. The connection of the learning between places is really, really important.
Absolutely, and kind of speaking of that learning, we think there's no better place to start than to hear from the some of the colleagues and some of their stories about working inside these place pilots. And by the power of technology, we're hoping to share a video with you now, just a short clip.
I think for me, I've really enjoyed just being part of something new. I've been part of the place team from the start, so I've really been able to see how things have shaped. The biggest thing for me is how much we've all become such a close team.
For me, it's the working together, the collaborative side of it. Before, you kind of just like in your own bubble and then just do your own thing, but you can actually see things getting done a lot quicker for the customer.
I think for me, one of the biggest things has always been the collaboration between us and the NCs. Before I started on Place, it was very much a you and I scenario. And then ever since we've all come together, we've got such a great working relationship, and we are like a little family. It's a big step forward for engineers to NCs is brilliant.
Yeah. The fact that we're all working together and we've got one place to go to get an answer. It's nice getting to know, like, have a regular engineer and stuff like that. And also being part of like a smaller team. We had a coffee morning, didn't we, here last week? Yeah. And we had the surveyor, the engineer, the NCs, and the residents thought it was brilliant.
For me, it's more of a series of small wins, seeing like it should have been the way that we was always working, especially with repairs. So we have our sort of place chat. We know a customer's on a school run or they're not going to be in for an appointment, we can drop a message to one of the engineers, or if one of the engineers have been out and they feel that they've done their sort of bit of whatever needed to be done, but the customer needs more, or the customer could do with a visit, they'll get in touch with me. And it's that teamwork. We do numerous joint visits now with the engineers, which is something that we never used to do, and that works really well.
There's ones where they've been struggling to get appointments, or they've been missed for certain reasons, whether it's engineers or just human error. I able to actually get appointments quicker for people who usually would be maybe waiting weeks and weeks. I remember there was one with Steve and then Carl, where there's a customer who fell over in the property within like 10-15 minutes. We was there.
There was a customer that had been in a block of flats and the customer hadn't been seen. And Stephen was just walking around the back and he heard the gentleman shout. Stephen saw that he was on the floor, rang an ambulance, instantly rang us to go and help. And obviously we gained access. There was no sort of problems. The ambulance crew could get straight in, do what they needed to do and help that customer get to hospital.
We was able to get there within 15 minutes, whereas the following injured channels keeping hours, so we was able to get that person quicker.
So I had got an ongoing complaint, but we can't seem to get to the bottom of it. So put it in the chat, loads of us got involved. Engineer came out, spent a long time there. I got the surveyor out, spent a bit of time there, and now she's happy. She knows exactly what the problem is, so she's happy. So that wouldn't have happened if place hadn't been in place, because I would have still been chasing my tail trying to find somebody to come out. But you get things like that every day. You'll go and do an annual review and they'll go, oh, my tap doesn't work. And you'll think, well, okay, well, I'll report that. And then you come back and you think, actually, I've just put it in the chat. And then Sam will say, yeah, Rob's free. He can go and do it now. So I had one last week, went to a property, a couple of the window handles didn't work. So I did the annual review. Afterwards said, this lady's got blah, blah, blah. And Sam organised for somebody to go out and do it. So she was like, oh my God, I can't believe that.
I think that when I'm visiting customers, things what I'm thinking about have changed slightly. So I'm looking at the bigger picture and giving us the confidence to think, well, hang on a minute, if we got in touch with this person, if we did this, then we might be able to change something what perhaps before we couldn't. And that's become apparent when we have our sort of meetings where we come up with ideas of what we would like to see in place. And then Fast forward then a few months down the line, and these things, these ideas, what we've put into place, are now coming into practice.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lauren. And yeah, so I feel that really gives a flavour of the view of some of the colleagues that have been working inside the Place team. But we've heard there from the colleagues, but I think one of the real kind of core tenets of place-based working is that it's about building the relationships with the customers, between colleagues and our customers. So if I come to you, perhaps first, Emily, kind of, we really wanted to try and reduce the burden for customers in getting things done, how they contact us, how long it takes to get things done once they do contact us. How has that gone?
I think it's been successful. I think the team would say that it's been successful. There's a few different ways that we've tried to implement making sure that is successful. And one of the asks for Staple Hill in particular was that Bromford is visible. The people that live there want Bromford to be visible, and we've tried not to overcomplicate that in terms of doing simple things like back to basics with posters, so who your place team is, and we've got those around our schemes, in our blocks, on our notice boards, so that our customers have a picture and a name for who they need to contact for the different things, so they know who their scheme officer is, they know who the neighbourhood coach is. They even go in deeper into the organisation, so they know who the planner is now. They've got names, and it takes away from being that faceless organisation and that faceless communication to actually they know who they need to speak to now. So I think that's been really great for our customers.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emily. I'll open that up to Helen and then Rachel after.
Yeah, I'd kind of echo that. I mean, I think one of the great things that has improved communication for customers is having our teams chat, is that when one of us posts something in the chat about maybe a customer query, we all dip into that. And an example of that is sometimes a customer may have contacted to say their concern, say some rubbish is being dumped. Whereas that would have just been sent to the neighbourhood coach to investigate. If our engineer is close by, he will nip and go and have a look at that for us, speak to the customer, take some photographs. So we'll action that much more quickly. It's means that it's not just one customer's role. We all see as a team that we can all help and support that area, and that we're all visible in that area. And I'd spread that out to people that aren't in our core team. So we've got landscapers who've really embraced this way of working and are starting to chat to customers much more in the place areas, understand what's going on with their lives and homes, getting to know the customers much more rather than just turning up, cutting the grass, doing little bit extras for customers who may just need that bit of help. But also coming back to us and saying, oh, I've seen a customer today and then mention this, it might be helpful for the neighbourhood coach to visit. So I feel that customers feel they're getting more of a seamless service from Bromford now, not just that neighbourhood coach would be their normal point of contact.
Absolutely. I feel like, particularly as you get to be quite a big organisation, we were already quite a big organisation before as Bromford, expanding that to be Bromford Flagship and potentially Bromford Flagship Live West next year. It's very easy to become that kind of big faceless organisation where you have siloed specialist teams, isn't it? Bringing all of those kind of resources into one seamless team, so people actually know where to go, and you're not getting passed around as a customer through different teams. Can really change the experience. Perhaps, Rachel, your reflections on kind of how the relationships with customers has changed over the course of the pilot.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far, and whilst we've had the neighbourhood coaching model for quite a long time at the Bromford side of things, customers have known the neighbourhood coach, and we've always kind of had that as a metric of where we've asked customers, do you know your neighbourhood coach? But what I think Place brings is now they're not just knowing the neighbourhood coach, but they're knowing their income advisors, they're knowing their repairs, their operatives, because we're having the same people working in the same places. It's also bringing the wider business kind of local. It's reducing the distance between the customer and the other functions or teams within Bromford Flagship, Bromford. And by sharing that local knowledge, it's not just on the neighbourhood coach having and holding that local knowledge now, more and more people, more and more teams that we're working with to get things done or knowing the local knowledge. And I think that's a whole thing about place-based working. It's about people understanding the local need and context in that area so that we can make decisions based on that.
Absolutely. That kind of the feeling of having told somebody already at an organization. I mean, I find it all the time when you deal with customer service. You tell the first customer service agent your problem, and then you get passed to somebody else and they ask you the exact same question. It's incredibly annoying and obviously slows everything down massively. Paul, have you got any reflections? You're obviously not directly involved in the pilots themselves, but kind of you are kind of lurking in the chats, aren't you, for each of the place teams? What are your kind of reflections on how things have developed?
Yeah, I mean, Nick Streetfield in the chat has asked the question about the chat seems core. And it's just a Teams channel. It's just existing technology that we've enabled colleagues to have access to. But the place-based working obviously is not just about what it's about connecting with the community, the stakeholders, the other institutions that are active. But when we set this up, Mark, the first thing we wanted to look at was you can't do that if your colleagues are siloed. You can't do that. You can't even begin to kind of widen your scope with the outside world if you've got internal silos. And we had internal silos. What has been proven from these pilots is we can break those down really quickly and really simply, as a couple of colleagues said. So Carl, who's the engineer in Lichfield, he said that thing, didn't he, about there was a them and us, and I've heard him speak about that in a sense that actually, we blame the coaches for this and they blamed this. That's gone. That's completely gone because they are one team. And what's really important about this now, from my perspective, is we haven't changed the colleagues. They're the same colleagues. They were always focused on residents and getting things done, but the system that we created had kept them apart. And that's the first rule of place-based working, is bring those things together so they're one team and they're thinking about one team. And they're all now on the same side, which they all kind of were, but those barriers that you just mentioned got in the way and affected the relationships.
Absolutely. It's kind of establishing the trust between customers and colleagues between each other. It's absolutely crucial to the success of this, and I think is one of the really big changes that we have seen. That's great. I mean, we've got we've heard some reflections from the colleagues already via the video, but perhaps shall I come to you first, Helen? There has been a question in the chat, which is organizational question, which I think you'll be able to answer. So how big is each area for kind of neighborhood management within that kind of neighborhood coaches and also the places themselves? But also within kind of bringing those colleagues together, what have you noticed between kind of changes in how colleagues have been working together?
South Lichfield is 918 homes. So that's a mix of general needs homes, and we've got some housing for older people, and we've got a specialist extra care scheme as well. So each neighbourhood coach has around 200-ish homes within their patch. So that's how it's made up. And then we've got the colleagues working in the Beacon Park Village, which is the extra care scheme. I suppose one of the big reflections about how colleagues have come together, Beacon Park Village is a really great example of that. It's a really great community asset within South Lichfield. However, the other parts of the business didn't really connect with it that much. They're very much a specialist service. And so the neighbourhood coaches working in South Lichfield before place rarely went to Beacon Park Village or even really kind of considered it as part of Bromford. One of the things we've really worked hard on is sharing what a great community asset that is for the people living in South Lichfield. It's in the heart of the place area, but they have so much going on that other older people or families can access. So they have events on, they've got a great restaurant, but just that connection, which we neighbourhood coaches are sharing with customers, saying, they hold, a coffee morning, they have different things on, if you're struggling around the area, it's a great place to go along. And neighbourhood coaches have took customers along there to show them the facilities, to encourage them to go along going forward. So I think that's just one example about the teams coming together and working differently. I think the difference between the relationship with repairs and neighbourhood coaches is a game changer. We're all there to try and resolve the issue for the customer. We don't think about this is your job and this is my job. It's our job to try and find the solution. You know, we can't resolve everything all of the time. And we try and think of it from a customer perspective much, much more now. And that just feels like that's our natural stance now. You know, what can we do to try and find a solution for this? And it's not just the neighbourhood coach's responsibility or the repairs or the planner, it's all of us.
Brilliant. Thanks, Helen. I'll come to you next, Rachel. What kind of changes have you seen in bringing colleagues together in the North Cotswolds, and perhaps if you could speak within that to how does line management work? We've had a question about that in the chat as well.
So how we, you know, I think we've touched quite a bit on how we you know, as Helen says, we work as one now. We work as one organisation rather than repairs doing theirs. Take a complaint, for example. It would sit with complaints who may sit in a central office, may not be that aware of the challenges in the Cotswolds, and then one task might go to repairs and they do their bit. We now we'll do a joint visit. So we've had a complaint recently that was repair orientated. I kind of oversaw everything as a place team lead because, again, being a place team lead, you've now got oversight on all of the different areas within and all of the different functions. And then we were able to facilitate a visit with a surveyor with the technical knowledge, and then myself kind of with the customer, and was able to see that right through from the first contact to the end, closing that complaint. In terms of the line management side of things, at the moment, all three as place team leads, we don't have direct line management responsibilities. I know that various people within the business are working through that to see what the future of the place model may look like. So I don't know what that may be at the moment, but well, obviously we rely on the technical knowledge in the different areas. I guess our role at the moment is coordinating and bringing that technical and sharing that knowledge. I think another thing with place is now colleagues have better understanding of each other's roles and better appreciation for each other's roles, which I think is really critical. And I saw another question in the chat around empty homes. At each place a slightly different setup for ourselves in the North Cotswolds. We do have a dedicated engineer who sits in place and in empty homes. He's our inroad, but equally there's flexibility. So sometimes, as I don't know if Glenn works in the empty home space, but if he does, he'll be aware that demand changes in that space. So we have got some flexibility and fluidity. It's not that he's stuck in place and he doesn't work outside. But again, what we want to achieve with place is that consistency, those relationships with ourselves as colleagues and with the customers. And having Matt Green, who sits in empty homes in our place, has been really, really, it's been really beneficial for all of us.
Absolutely, having that specific contact within a team really helps kind of knit things together. How about you, Emily? What are your reflections on how colleagues are working differently? I suppose you've had you might have a slightly different viewpoint from Rachel and Helen, who are almost kind of, don't want to use the word institutionalized into the place-based way of working, but you perhaps had quite a shock 3 weeks in, kind of moving from one way of working to another.
Yeah, it has been a really different way of working, come from a service delivery background, so I'm moving over into this, and the things that jumped out to me straight away was the teams being able to work together, and echoing what both Helen and Rachel have said, like having access to a repairs engineer, having access to a planner, the planner, the teams knowing who they can speak to and how they can get questions asked has just been a game changer for everybody involved. It's also meant that we can sort of be proactive in what we're doing. I know a piece of work was done a few months ago in terms of fitting window restrictors in the blocks of flats, and that was something that previously probably wouldn't have been able to do, because it's something that's identified by the people that are working in place as needing to be done, and then we're able to use that repairs engineers because we know what the resource that we've got to be able to do those do those jobs. So previously, maybe that wouldn't have been achievable, but it's something that we can achieve in place. The other thing that, I mean, is quite specific to Staple Hill, but the lifts that we have lots of, we have a high-rise block of flats and other blocks of flats, and the lifts breaking down is just a complete headache. I know Angela, who's here at the moment, will agree with me that it's just a complete headache. And since having Place, it's been so positive for the customers that we've got within our organisation the right people together in the right place to be able to report those lifts breaking down, get the work orders that we need raised, get the quotes that we need quoted, and get the work approved so that it can be done same day or next day. So what previously would have taken a really long time to get all of those different teams on the same page now happens, can be happening within hours because we know who we all need to speak to. So that's something that's been really, really positive. The lifts still break down. It's still an issue. It's still something that we're working on, but we've got a much faster solution that we can give to the customers.
That's fantastic, thank you. And Paul, there's been a couple of questions in the chat as we go. I'd like your wider reflections on how you think things have changed. But there's a couple of questions about just leading on from what Emily has just alluded to there about faster solutions and being able to do things potentially same day for kind of smallish jobs. There's been a question from Amanda about, is it not still the customer's responsibility to report repairs that need doing rather than waiting to tell someone at a secondary visit, and any wider kind of reflections on how you think things have changed?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it absolutely is residents' responsibility to report things, and we absolutely encourage that at all time. I think what people alluded to in the chat is if we can see it and we know it and we can make it a little bit easier, why not do it? We don't want to be that kind of bureaucratic approach of, oh yeah, we've seen that, I could drop this in the chat straight away. So there's some of that is about balancing kind of expectations. But most of the things, and I'm sure the places will agree with me here, most of the times when colleagues intervene is when they spot something to make customers life a little bit easier, or it's a complex issue that hasn't gone away. So at that point in time, we'd kind of intervene. Overall reflections, is everything we've just talked about so far was really positive. Where we haven't got to, and we wouldn't have expected to get to, is that next thing that Emily kind of alluded to, which is around how do we get ahead of those things, those persistent problems that kind of keep breaking down. We're very good at kind of intervening and fixing it, but that's not a long-term solution. We need to have a long-term plan for those things. And that's the next stage of places, to start thinking about planning for the future of each of those places in the short, the medium, and the long term. We were talking the other day when we were talking about this, about, some of the changes we'll be talking about in place will be 10 years plus. Some of the things will be 5 years. And there's some immediate things that we need to communicate to residents that need to be done within the next year, and they need to know about it. But, this is the very, very first stage. We've had 3 or 4 possibly up and running. There's going to be 78 places across Bromford Flagship. Each of those places will need a plan. It's the first full year, but it's very early days.
Absolutely. There's some fantastic questions coming in. I'm making a note of all of them, and I'll curate them as we go. I think if we've kind of reflected on customers and colleagues' reflections. Now we're going to play the second half of that video that we saw earlier to kind of talk a little bit about kind of the bigger picture of Place. How do we kind of connect with other organisations that are working in the communities that we are too?
I think for me, I'm more aware of now increased since being on Place. So it can be difficult at times with all the new systems and learning all these things and trying to adhere to all the urgent jobs and all the urgent mold washes that we're working in. So it's quite hard to facilitate everything. There's good weeks and there's bad weeks, but for the most part, I just like to be able to facilitate where I can, just do as much as I can, which is the main thing for me.
As an engineer, you feel differently about the customer. Normally, obviously, it's all facts and figures driven, all about performance, whereas it's slightly different on Place because you've got that little bit of extra time to be able to go, right, there's other jobs at this property. I can message our planner, say, got a couple more jobs here. They just get allocated to you, just crack on with the jobs, which is great, really.
I mean, we've got quite a good relationship with the services out here, but I think we're doing more work sort of out of some of the schemes, like Anna's doing a lot at Fisher House and things like that, which wasn't happening before. You're absolutely right. It's a bit of both, really, because Fisher House hasn't really been noticed. I've got this community hall that does an afternoon coffee with the same 6 people, and it's been going on for the last however many years. And that's it. So I arranged for loads of services to come along to talk to the residents. And now I'm kind of on the map. It's kind of recognised that, oh yeah, Fisher House is available, so lots of different things in the pipeline. Got Tai Chi starting, Cotswold Friends are coming out. Different agencies are beginning to get involved now.
Yeah. Point of view pitch at the moment, it's going okay. Obviously, I'm still early with it. It's good because the customers have a contact with an engineer, so they feel a bit of trust and they feel like there's someone there who knows what they're talking about and getting things done. And to try and get a list of works done for them, they feel like a sense of relief that things are getting done and not getting misheard or not listened to.
We're doing more sort of project work, whereas before it was a lot of, you've got to do your annual review, you've got to do this. Now it's the wider picture, and it's really nice that we're given the opportunity to be able to look at other things. We're working with a lot more other agencies in Lichfield, whereas before I perhaps didn't get involved in a lot of that. I'm going to meetings with partnership groups, which I perhaps wasn't doing before. So yeah, I think as well as doing the tick box stuff, what the NCs have to do, we're now looking at sort of really improving our communities and really getting stuck in.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Lauren. So some reflections there from colleagues about how they're thinking about the bigger picture. I think you can almost, as I listen to that there, I can almost think about that thinking bigger is almost on 2 levels. There's a almost like within team thinking bigger than just my role. How does my role fit in within the place? But there's also that even bigger question of how does this place team fit within the wider community? How does it fit in with those the kind of support groups that the neighbourhood coach was just talking about there? So perhaps I'll come to you first, Rachel, this time. What are your kind of reflections on how we've kind of engineered some time to think about that bigger picture?
I think you're right. There are 2 kind of key elements to place. One being an internal way of working and reducing the distance between the organisation and the customer, but the other one is very much around the community, building communities and looking wider than just homes and customer. For the North Cotswolds, I was quite fortunate. A lot of the neighbourhood coaches had strong relationships with a lot of our external stakeholders already. We're already in touch with the different charities, the key stakeholders that you would think of. But what Place has done is we've been able to build from those foundations, and as Anna alluded to in the video, whilst we did maybe the odd coffee morning, we're now thinking, well, how can we utilise this space even more? One of the challenges in the Cotswolds is lack of space, lack of community space. So now agencies have seen that we have got some community space, some holes within our kind of accommodations over 55. So how can we work jointly and align our priorities? Agencies that look at health or agencies that look at income maximisation, we're starting to bring all of that together in the same space and working collaboratively to have the same outcomes. We're early days in some initiatives that we're working with in the Moulton Place, but just to touch on that is 3 key things that I'm working on in the project space is home maximisation. So looking at our homes and seeing how we can better utilise the homes that we've got and potentially look to downsize, upsize and work with our customers, but as well as other agencies to do that. The other thing is data on income maximisation. So the council, for example, have got an initiative and a data piece that they've got. So we're in touch and having, still in early conversations about how can we work together to bring that to life. So yeah, we're starting to think more than just the reactive. We're looking at proactive stuff now, and what can we do in the proactive space to ultimately make our customers improve and thrive, but to look beyond that and look at the communities. How can we better communities as well?
Brilliant. Thanks, Rachel. I'll come to you next, Emily.
Yeah, so I think that shift to place-based working has been really, really important in Staple Hill for the communities. It's there's really, really rich communities, and location-wise, we're really close to the high street in Staple Hill. So there's loads and loads of different local groups. And I know, reflecting back last year, one of the projects that Angela was able to deliver was using men in sheds to build benches and flower beds for the community within the Staple Hill area. So we were able to give a donation to a local community group as an organisation, and they produced some really beautiful flower beds for our schemes, and benches for some of our schemes and around our blocks of flats. So that was something that we were able to build, that relationship with an outside organisation because of place. And I think that's the beauty of the place lead role as well, is having that time to build those outside relationships. And I know one of the things that we're working on in Staple Hill at the moment, I'm working with Ashley, the scheme officer leader for the ILS scheme, so the over 55 schemes, about setting up a marketplace for older people and trying to get everybody in one place that can offer services to the older people in our areas. And it's not just about like Age UK and health services, but fun things as well. Like we've talked about rock choir and all of those types of organisations that can offer, that are in the community, they're already embedded in the community, and it's about bringing them all together and how we can use that within Bromford.
Absolutely. I feel like that's a really key message from place-based working, is that sometimes you have to recognise that you're not the agency that is best placed to do things. Communities are very capable of doing things for themselves if you just give them the space to do it. Exactly that example of building the flower beds. We had the capability to do that ourselves. We could have dedicated engineer time or volunteers or whatever to go and do that for a community, but you don't need to. You just need to give them the space to do it for themselves. How about you, Helen?
Yeah, I think I noticed a couple of colleagues on from Lichfield Cases that so they reached out to us to talk about the concerns that some residents coming to them about repairs in their homes, about the service they're getting from Bromford, whereas that perhaps wouldn't have been a two-way conversation. We've linked together and talked. I went out and met with the two colleagues from Cases to share what we're trying to do in Bromford about how we respond to repairs, what our timescales are for repairs, our approach to CDM, condensation, damp and mould. But from that was a really great initial conversation, and I think built up a relationship between ourselves, because their view was that perhaps we weren't doing as well as we could do for some of our customers, and some of our customers were getting a poor experience. We had this honest conversation where they shared their concerns that they'd heard, and I took them on board. But then I came back to the office and chatted to people who know more about this stuff than I do. And the upshot from that is that we're going to meet again in January. So it won't just be me talking about it. Some colleagues from the repairs, so I've got the repairs customer manager coming along. We've got a guy working to try and look to improve our services and repairs, where we're doing lots of collaboration with customers already. And he's going to come along to that meeting as well, so he can really understand what customers are saying. So I think that just shows that kind of forward thinking, that we don't know all of the answers and we need to hear what's going on from our customers, but building those relationships from a proactive approach rather than just reacting to complaints. Hopefully we're going to improve things for customers going forward.
Absolutely. So that's kind of the end of my questions. I mean, we've dropped in a few of our viewers' questions as we go. And perhaps if I run through a couple of those now, I'm going to group them, and just please, panelists, jump in with any kind of reflections on these questions. We've obviously had a few questions about how we've monitored kind of customer feedback from this kind of move to place-based working. Don't know if any of the panelists have any reflections on their perceptions of how customers have experienced this change.
I'll go. I think overall we do surveys with customers on various different aspects of our service, and generally the trend is in the place that they're improving, especially I think around the repairs service and knowing their neighbourhood coach. I mean, the neighbourhood coach model has been part of Bromford's offer for a long time, but I think it's perhaps got watered down a little bit over the last few years, where colleagues, neighbourhood coaches have had to get involved with lots of different services. And I think this has brought their focus back to being out and about in their communities, to talking to customers, so they're much more visible on patch. So hopefully that's improving customer satisfaction, but also around having the same engineer quite often go to their home so they can build a relationship with them, so they have that trust that that engineer knows their home already and knows about the types of components in that home.
I'd just probably jump in and agree with that completely, Helen. And I think that there's some things where that trust thing is still in the process of being built up again. And we've got to be honest about that. So the question in the chat about, have all the metrics shown massive difference? Not in all areas, no, because there's some areas where customers are going to have to see that we're in this for the long term. This isn't just a pilot. This isn't something we're going to take away again. They need to see it become embedded. So we're fully confident that those things will make, we know we can solve complaints faster. We know we can do those kind of things. We can prove those things. But we've got to show we're in this for the long term, Mark.
Absolutely agree. I mean, we're already at the end of the allotted time, but I do want to grab another couple of questions, which is talking about what's next. We've had a couple of questions, how many new place projects are planned next year? How does this integrate with existing systems, etc.? What are the next steps for the rollout across the whole of Bromford? I wondered, Paul, would you be able to speak to some of that, as in, like, when are we going to see big ticket change across the organisation, do you think?
Yeah, so the next strategy, so over the next 4 years, all the 78 place teams that have been identified, the places will be stood up. That will happen, but we'll do that gradually. So we'll start, from next year, we'll certainly be doing another webinar that shows exactly how those things are going to be set up. So we're going to start with a specific local authority area and then gradually increase what's actually in that place. Probably looking over the next year to establish about kind of 10, 12 teams around that kind of focus because what's crucial about that, Mark, is that's got to be set up in the real world. There was a clip from Angelo in one of the clips where he said, actually, this is actually making me busier as a planner, essentially. And he's correct, because we've set up the place teams, but we haven't changed the rest of the organisation. So the next step is to move to that and change the entire operating model that supports the place teams. That's the really tricky bit. And there's loads of work that teams are doing at the moment. So more news on that in the new year. But absolutely, the pilots essentially have shown that place-based working is the way forward. The whole organisation has to follow that now, and that will be the central component of our strategy that will launch in about June next year.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul, and thank you to the rest of our panel, to Emily, to Rachel, to Helen. Thank you all very much for joining us today. We'll be back in the new year with more webinars, all to do with our progress on place-based working, including a rollout across our different regions in the East as well. So please do stay tuned. A recording of this webinar will go up on our YouTube channel. Check that out at Bromford-lab. And yes, keep an eye out for an invite in the new year for the next webinar. Thanks so much for joining us, and hope to see you again soon. And Merry Christmas, everybody.